you're always learning. I feel like I'm always learning and just having my eyes open. And I think with this pandemic as well, I think it's really forced open my eyes even wider.
Emily, we appreciate you being here today. And what we wanted to learn about from you and share with our listeners is all about dream jobs. And someone once told me that their dream job is the job they have. But sometimes that seems like a tall order. And so we are excited to hear from you about your tips to making the job you have your dream job. So we want to start off by sharing the kinds of projects and roles that keep you inspired at this stage in your career. Can you tell us a bit about these?
Absolutely. So I am currently the executive director of the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego. And I have been at the Nonprofit Institute for the last 4 years. And when I think about my career now and why I love my job so much now, it's because I'm kind of thinking about this as my last decade of my career and how I can make the biggest difference in promoting the change I want to see in the world. I have to say I'm most motivated at this point by the idea that it's my duty, my obligation to make the world a better place for my children and for future generations. And not only for future generations of people, but also for our living planet. So everything I think about with my job, I think about with that deep motivation at this point in my career.
The things you're doing now, are they part of your job description or your side or some side projects that you're working on? And if they're side projects, can you tell us about how you get them incorporated into your job description if they are side projects?
Sure. So I will say, first of all, just the mission of the Nonprofit Institute that I lead, it's threefold. It's to deliver action-oriented research, to develop transformational leaders that can be change makers in their community, and to support and strengthen the leadership and management capacity of nonprofit organizations. And so that's really the mission of the organization. And as the executive director, it's my job to ensure that we're carrying forth that mission by making sure that we have enough money to do it. So I spend a big part of my job is fundraising. Another part of my job is to make sure that we're thinking about what's around the corner and being proactive in responding to that and carrying out our mission of delivering research and leadership and organizational development to help people that want to advance social good. I have to be thinking about what's around the corner that we should be anticipating that we haven't, and also make sure that we have the appropriate strategies in place to really advance our mission in the way that's most effective. So then you ask, well, what about the things I'm passionate about? Well, okay, technically you could say it's not in my job description that when we're supporting and strengthening leaders and organizations that I should really want to, I should focus that in such a way that it's helping to advance positive change in our communities. But I think that's actually where I really thought about my job and where I am now. And I thought, well, how could we as an organization that's, helping those on the front lines that are essential workers right now at this time of the pandemic, how can we help position them better? And so thinking about the research, well, we know that nonprofit organizations, they do the things, and the leaders of those organizations, they provide the things for society that government and business either can't or won't do, things that fall through the cracks. And so in thinking about the kind of research we provide, well, we track a lot of statistics on the health and vitality of the nonprofit sector, as well as quality of life issues. And one of the things that we've really focused on over the last few years is tracking more of the inequities in every kind of quality of life indicator you can think about to really help nonprofit organizations in a very localized level understand how those inequities play out in communities and what their roles are, no matter what their mission, and really redressing those. And so that is something we didn't do a few years ago, but that's something we do now. And that's part of, when I think of how I changed my job description, I thought about how could we support and strengthen these organizations, not just because they're a sector of our society, but because we want to help activate them to be as impactful and making a positive difference in our communities and addressing root problems that we face, that the pandemic has only shown even more clearly, not just in our region, but across the country. So that's one thing that I've done, is really looked at, well, how can our research not just be an analysis of the health of the sector, but also help inform nonprofits and inform elected officials and the funding community about where the critical issues where nonprofits should be focusing, to help inform public policy and funding. On the leadership development and organizational capacity development, one of the things that we've also done is really prioritized in looking at, for instance, inequities in the San Diego region, whether you're looking at educational attainment or health inequities, or you're looking at where you see some of the dirtiest air and water, where you see the highest rates of COVID-19, et cetera. One of the things that we realized was that those community-based organizations that are in those communities, based in and serving those communities, they're closest to the problem. They have some of the deepest relationships in those communities. We should prioritize them for supporting and helping them, both as leaders and as organizations. So that's another thing that in my role, I've helped to change with my team, is kind of looking at, well, where can we direct our help? So it's not simply all across the board, although we have programs that are designed for a broad swath of organizations in our region, but also let's prioritize those organizations that are really making a big difference in our community, that are often ignored and underfunded, but have an outsized impact in helping their communities. So those are some of the things that that I've done to kind of change my job description a bit, to do the things that I feel like I could contribute in making more of an impact in my role.
As you were talking, because at first I was thinking that it's really about, how do you sneak your own passions into your job and so that it becomes a dream job. But as you were talking, and that notion of looking around the corner, that you've learned so much at your current position and kind of have refined your passions there, and that might be another way that you've made your dream job, is by discovering what's meaningful in your current position.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think it's interesting. I feel like I'm learning more and more in so many different ways how interconnected all the issues are. And in some ways, coming over to the University of San Diego and being exposed to a campus where you have all these different disciplines coming together, where there's a real strong focus on social justice as an issue across the university. To me, I felt like that was a really wonderful opportunity to learn more deeply about the interconnections of different issues and the social justice facets of so many of them and how interrelated they are. And it made me realize that you're always learning. I feel like I'm always learning and just having my eyes open. And I think with this pandemic as well, I think it's really forced open my eyes even wider and made me realize I'm never going to see everything, but I have to keep open to learning and understanding that the world's not what it behooves us to really understand the challenges that we face and how and the role that we have to play in addressing those challenges and working with others.
So many people have a passion in higher education, and Estelle and I and you, we worked in higher education for many years. And Estelle, that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book about thriving higher education. We have a passion for higher education, but in higher education, there's also a need for a mastery of diplomacy. And my doctorate is in higher education administration from GW, George Washington. But I don't think they gave us any courses about diplomacy or anything like that. At least that I can remember. But you're so right. As working that work experience in higher education, that is so key. It's so many things that you learn on the job that they don't teach you in school. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because just from my own work experience in higher education, you're so right. And Estelle told me, you've been able to do that, that diplomacy and why it's so important. Can you tell our listeners about the importance of that, as particularly in higher education?
Actually, I left academia once earlier on in my career because I didn't think it was very compatible with being a young mother. And as I came back into it, one of the things that I was reminded of was that there are a lot of passions and egos in higher education. Um, and yet, you really do need to work with others and to have their support to get anything done. And
Mm.
and so one of the things I've certainly recognized is that it's always important to find ways to contribute to other people's success and
Mhm.
demonstrate that you care about other people, that you're not just solely ambitious for yourself. And so if there are ways that you can contribute to others' success and publicly recognize them, that's really important. I think another thing is our success isn't, none of our successes are are achieved by just the what we
Mhm.
do ourselves. We depend on other people for our success. And so I think it's also really important to always thank people for the ways in which they've contributed to your success, and just recognize that no person lives on an island. And then another thing is to find ways to collaborate in ways that are mutually beneficial. So I know there's a professor that I work with across campus. He's in the Environment and Ocean Sciences department, and he really wanted to lead uh, a campus, this campus-wide initiative on care for our common home. And so we found ways to work together and help what we could do at the nonprofit institute, help buttress his efforts and elevate his leadership. He's now the director of care for our common home at the university. Um, Two other things I would say are that I try to do this. I'm not always successful. That is, as much as I can, I try to take things at face value when people tell me things and not overanalyze what they're telling me, because otherwise sometimes it can just cause me to perseverate and worry too much, and I tend to be a worrier anyway. And then finally, another thing I try to do as much as possible is focus my energy outward on the positive things that are happening and not get too caught up in gossip. I learned that especially at my old job. And one thing that I had going for me at that time was that I'm hearing impaired. And so I couldn't hear a lot of, we were in open office space. But I really realized that's actually good, because it just I didn't realize how much that can drag you down. And so it's something I've tried to also keep at my new job.
Mm. And it's great because, like I said, they really should add that to the curriculum because it's so important. I think in higher education, people think that, everybody just lovey-dovey, and sometimes there could be politics in higher education, a lot of politics, and it could lead to people getting stressed and not wanting to be part of higher education. But like you said, if you look at the good, if you collaborate, and that's how Estelle and I got together through our collaborations. If you find people to collaborate with, and if it's not always about, like you said, about me, if you try to help others and support others with their goals and their projects, and it comes back to you, then becomes a mutual thing back and forth. And then remember, hey, this person helped me. I want to connect with that person or reach out. So great suggestions.